California is drawing battle lines, and Texas is the reason. While the nation watches a high-stakes political chess match unfold, Governor Gavin Newsom just fired the opening shot in what could become the most consequential redistricting war in American history. On August 14, 2025, Newsom announced he's calling a special election to completely redraw California's congressional districts, potentially flipping 5 Republican seats to Democratic control. This isn't just about maps and boundaries. This is about the future of American democracy itself. The trigger for this unprecedented move? President Donald Trump's direct intervention in Texas politics. Trump personally called Texas Governor Greg Abbott with a simple demand: find me 5 seats. Now, Texas Republicans are rushing through a mid-decade redistricting plan that could eliminate 5 Democratic congressional seats, giving the GOP a stronger grip on the House of Representatives ahead of the crucial 2026 midterms. Newsom's response was swift and defiant. Standing before cameras in Los Angeles at the Japanese-American National Museum, flanked by Democratic members of Congress and union leaders, he delivered a message that echoed across the political landscape. I know they say, don't mess with Texas. Well, don't mess with the great Golden State. But this wasn't just political theater. As the governor spoke about defending democracy, federal agents were conducting enforcement operations just feet away from the venue.
Hello, Michael.
Yes,
you are.
Go ahead. You're at the event. Tell us what you've seen and what you've heard.
Well, listen, this was supposed to be an event that Governor Newsom is having a scheduled news conference where he's going to talk about the gerrymandering process, about redistricting the state of California in response to President Trump. You arrive here, and suddenly outside of the Japanese-American National Museum, there is about 20 Border Patrol agents that are here lined up, and suddenly a man who appears to be working for some type of strawberry vendor, a driver, gets out to assemble whatever they're going to assemble to sell these strawberries. He is quickly whisked away. Border Patrol then starts to talk to the number of reporters that have gathered here, including NBC4 and Telemundo 52.
Border Patrol agents had descended on the plaza outside, detaining at least one person from a strawberry vendor truck. The agents claimed this was part of their ongoing roving patrol duties to keep Los Angeles safer, operations they said they'd been conducting for 2 months. The timing of this federal show of force sent shockwaves through the assembled Democratic officials. Mayor Karen Bass rushed outside to confront the situation directly. Standing among protesters who had quickly gathered, she delivered a fiery condemnation. This is a complete provocation. There was no reason in the world for them to come here.
Having a press conference. There was no reason in the world for them to come here. They came here in all of their cars to do what? To take somebody who was driving a car and then denying that they took anybody at all? This is a complete provocation. This has nothing to do with safety. In fact, this is the exact opposite of keeping our city safe. We do not need them here, and they had no business to come here and provoke this.
Mayor Bass, you're live on NBC4 right now. You do not believe that this just happened to be a coincidence?
There is no way this was a coincidence. This was widely publicized that the governor and many of our other elected officials were having a press conference here to talk about redistricting, and they decided they were going to come and thumb their nose in front of the governor's face. Why would you do that? That is unbelievably disrespectful. It's a provocative act. They're talking about disorder in Los Angeles, and they are the source of the disorder in Los Angeles right now. This is just completely unacceptable. This is a administration, this is a Customs and Border Patrol that has gone amok. This absolutely has to stop. There was no danger here. There was no need to detain anyone here. And there was certainly no need to have a provocative act right here where the governor is having a press conference.
Mayor, the commander, Bavino, said that they were on routine patrol, and that's why they were here.
This has nothing to do with safety. In fact, this is the exact opposite of keeping our city safe. Newsom himself emerged to address the dramatic scene unfolding outside. You think it's coincidental? He asked reporters. Donald Trump and his minions, Tom Homan, tough guy, clearly decided, coincidentally or not, that this was a location to advance ICE arrests. People are scared. People are fearful. Wake up, America. This is a serious moment. The governor was announcing California's entry into what he called a five-alarm fire for democracy in the United States of America. The California plan is both audacious and complex. Unlike most states where legislatures control redistricting, California uses an independent redistricting commission created by voters in 2008 and expanded in 2010. This commission was designed to end partisan gerrymandering and create fair, competitive districts. Now, Newsom wants voters to temporarily set aside this system, the very reform that made California a national model for fair redistricting. The proposed ballot measure, dubbed the Election Rigging Response Act, would go before California voters on November 4th in a special election. If approved, it would allow the state legislature to bypass the independent commission and draw new congressional maps for the 2026, 2028, and 2030 elections. The goal is clear. Counter Texas's Republican gerrymander with a Democratic gerrymander of equal magnitude. The numbers tell the story of what's at stake. California currently holds 52 House seats, with Democrats controlling 43 and Republicans holding 9. Under the current independent maps, several of those Democratic seats are competitive, having flipped from Republican control just last November. But a partisan Democratic redraw could potentially create 5 or 6 additional safe Democratic seats, fundamentally altering the balance of power in Congress. Meanwhile, in Texas, the math works in reverse. Republicans currently hold 25 of the state's 38 congressional seats, while Democrats have 12, and there's one vacancy. But Trump won 27 of those seats in the 2024 presidential election, suggesting room for Republicans to create even more favorable districts. The proposed Texas maps would create 30 seats that voted for Trump, effectively eliminating 5 Democratic-held districts. The timing of these moves is no coincidence. With Republicans holding only a narrow majority in the House of Representatives, every seat matters for control of Congress in 2026. Trump and GOP leaders know they face historical headwinds in the midterm elections. The president's party typically loses seats. By redrawing maps now, they're trying to build a firewall against potential losses. But California's counter-strategy faces significant obstacles. The state's Democratic leaders initially expressed skepticism about abandoning the independent commission system they had championed. Assemblymember Alex Lee of Milpitas, whose vote may be crucial, questioned the precedent this would set. Common Cause California, which supported the original redistricting reforms, initially called it a dangerous move that would put our state's democracy on the line. The opposition is already organizing. Former Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, who championed the creation of the Independent Redistricting Commission, has announced he'll oppose Newsom's plan. Charles Munger Jr., the wealthy scientist who spent $12.4 million to pass the original redistricting reforms, is preparing to fund an opposition campaign. As his spokesperson stated, "We will have the resources necessary to make our coalition heard." The legal challenges are equally daunting. Unlike Texas, where the legislature can simply vote to redraw districts, California's Constitution requires voter approval to override the independent commission. The state must hold a special election estimated to cost over $200 million with no guarantee of success. Early internal polling shows only 52% of California voters supporting the measure. Enough to win, but perhaps not enough to withstand an expensive opposition campaign. The timeline is brutally tight. The California legislature returns from summer recess on August 18th with just 4 days until the August 22nd deadline to place the measure on the November ballot. Democratic leaders are also crafting additional legislation to create a trigger mechanism. The California plan would only take effect if Texas and other Republican states proceed with their own redistricting efforts. The human drama behind the political maneuvering is equally compelling. Texas Democratic legislators have fled their state en masse, denying Republicans the 2/3 quorum needed to conduct official business. These lawmakers have taken refuge in Democratic strongholds like Illinois and California, hoping to run out the clock on the special session that ends in late August. Some of these Texas Democrats appeared alongside Newsom at his August 8th press conference in Sacramento, where they met with former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and other top California Democrats. Texas State Representative Ann Johnson captured the moment's significance. "We are here because we do know that courage is contagious, and we are here to give hope to others to stand up and be courageous in this moment." This brings us to another seismic shift happening simultaneously in the nation's capital. On the same day as Newsom's redistricting announcement, Washington, D.C. Police Chief Pamela Smith signed an executive order fundamentally changing how the city cooperates with federal immigration enforcement.
All along, the official word has been that this is all about crime and the issue of crime in the District of Columbia. Now, what we know is that the D.C. Police Chief, Pamela Smith, signed an executive order that was issued today that allows the Metropolitan Police Department, that's the MPD here in D.C., if they are making traffic stops and they come across an undocumented person, they are allowed to report that person to federal officials, including Immigrations and Customs, ICE officials. Now, that is a departure from the normal policy operating here in D.C. This means, Sam, that an individual who has not been charged with anything, has not been detained, is allowed to be reported to ICE and then could potentially be sent away from the country, could be deported from the U.S. This, again, is a departure, but it also shows what we have seen over the last week or so from D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser and from the D.C. Police Chief, and that is a level of cooperation about this increased federal presence here in D.C. for what President Trump has called a crime emergency, Sam.
Yeah, that might have surprised some folks how cooperative it's been from D.C.'s standpoint.
For the first time, D.C. police officers making traffic stops will now share information about undocumented immigrants they encounter with ICE agents. This represents a dramatic departure from previous policy and a significant victory for the Trump administration's immigration crackdown. Under the new policy, immigrants who haven't even been charged with crimes can be reported to ICE for possible arrest and deportation. Federal agents and D.C. National Guard members are now patrolling D.C. streets around the clock, with approximately 800 Guard members assigned to the mission. Mayor Muriel Bowser, who once proudly described D.C. as a sanctuary city, has been walking a careful line during Trump's second presidency. While the city maintains several pro-immigration policies, including allowing non-citizens to vote in local elections, Bowser has shied away from the sanctuary city label and even proposed repealing local laws that limit cooperation with federal immigration authorities. Trump praised the D.C. police chief's decision, calling it a great step and predicting it would happen all over the country. The White House announced that 29 undocumented migrants were removed from D.C. on Wednesday night alone, a sign of the administration's accelerating enforcement efforts. The change comes as ICE operations have intensified across the country. In 2025 alone, documented immigration-related arrests have surpassed $109,000, approaching levels not seen since the Obama era. The most significant operations have targeted sectors reliant on immigrant labor, from agriculture to manufacturing. In Texas, federal authorities have been expanding the largest ICE detention center in the nation at Fort Bliss in El Paso, nicknamed the Lone Star Lockup.
In El Paso, and it's actually being referred to by some Texas lawmakers as the Lone Star Lockup. And that facility there we've been featuring here at News Nation is now actually holding illegal immigrants that are marked for deportation. So what we can tell you here is that both Senator John Cornyn and Congressman Tony Gonzalez toured this facility this week. The 5,000-bed facility had 100 detainees earlier this week, could hit 1,000 by Sunday. Gonzalez says it's a smart move to keep the operation on a military installation with direct access to resources like an airfield. He's also firing back at an El Paso County commissioner who compared the site to a concentration camp and accused federal law enforcement of acting like Nazis. Take a listen.
That's comical. I mean, he's gaslighting everybody. That's the furthest thing from the truth. First off, Fort Bliss is an amazing military facility. They do all kinds of different operations. Everything that's thrown their way, they've been successful out of it. So we should be supporting Fort Bliss and the men and women that serve in uniform on them, not attacking them. That's one. Two, that facility, it's located right next to the current ICE facility in El Paso. So while it's on Fort Bliss, it's really owned and operated by ICE.
The facility currently has capacity for 5,000 beds and is rapidly filling with detainees marked for deportation. But perhaps the most consequential story unfolding is the preparation for the Trump-Putin summit in Alaska. As redistricting battles rage and immigration enforcement intensifies, the two leaders are preparing for what could be the most significant diplomatic encounter of Trump's presidency. The summit, scheduled for August 15th at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage, aims to end the war in Ukraine that has raged for over 3 years. The lead up to this meeting has been filled with diplomatic drama and high-stakes maneuvering. Putin has described U.S. efforts to reach an agreement as quite energetic and sincere, while Trump has expressed growing frustration with the Russian leader's intransigence. Just days before the summit, Trump warned of very severe consequences if Putin doesn't agree to end the war. The choice of Alaska as the meeting location carries deep symbolism. It's the state Russia sold to the United States 158 years ago for $7.2 million. And now Putin may be trying to negotiate another land deal, this time involving Ukrainian territory. Trump has openly discussed the possibility of land swapping as part of any peace agreement, suggesting Ukraine might have to cede some territory currently occupied by Russian forces. European leaders and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky have expressed deep concerns about this approach. In a virtual meeting with Trump on Wednesday, they established 5 key principles for any negotiations. Everything concerning Ukraine must be discussed with Ukraine. There must be a trilateral format for talks. There must be a ceasefire. There must be reliable security guarantees. And Russia cannot have veto power over Ukraine's European and NATO prospects. Zelensky made clear that sanctions against Russia must be strengthened if there's no agreement on a ceasefire. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz warned that legal recognition of Russian occupation is not up for debate, and that the principle that borders cannot be changed by force must continue to apply. Analysts largely view the summit as a diplomatic victory for Putin, who has long sought a one-on-one meeting with a U.S. president without having to make significant concessions first. The fact that Trump agreed to the meeting despite Putin's refusal to halt attacks on Ukraine or back away from Russia's core war aims represents exactly the kind of diplomatic engagement the Russian leader has been seeking. The stakes couldn't be higher. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has fundamentally altered the global order, creating the largest conflict in Europe since World War II. Over 3 years of fighting have resulted in hundreds of thousands of casualties and displaced millions of people. The war has also reshaped international alliances, strengthened NATO, and created new geopolitical fault lines that will define the coming decades. Trump has repeatedly promised to end the war quickly, drawing on his claimed personal relationship with Putin. He's a smart guy, been doing it for a long time, but so have I, Trump said. We get along. It's a good respect level on both sides. And I think, something's going to come up. But the president has also acknowledged the conflict has proven more difficult to resolve than he initially expected. The interconnected nature of these 3 major stories, California's redistricting battle, DC's immigration policy shift, and the Trump-Putin summit, reflects the broader transformation of American politics under Trump's second presidency. Each represents a different facet of the administration's approach to consolidating power and reshaping institutions. In California, we see the breakdown of traditional norms around fair redistricting, as both parties abandon principles in favor of raw political advantage. The state that pioneered independent redistricting is now considering abandoning that system in the name of fighting fire with fire. In Washington, D.C., we see the federal government's expanding control over local law enforcement and immigration policy. The nation's capital, once proud of its sanctuary policies, is now actively cooperating with federal immigration enforcement in ways that would have been unthinkable just months ago. And in the upcoming Alaska summit, we see Trump's transactional approach to international relations, where personal relationships and deal-making take precedence over traditional diplomatic protocols and alliance commitments. The outcomes of these 3 developments will reverberate far beyond their immediate political impact. The California redistricting battle could trigger a nationwide race to the bottom in redistricting practices, undermining the few remaining examples of fair, nonpartisan map drawing. The D.C. immigration policy shift could become a model forced on other jurisdictions, fundamentally altering the relationship between local communities and federal enforcement. And the Trump-Putin summit could determine whether the war in Ukraine ends through negotiated settlement or continues to grind on, potentially expanding into a broader conflict that engulfs more of Europe. As we watch these stories unfold, we're witnessing nothing less than a fundamental test of American democratic institutions. Will the norms and processes that have governed American politics for decades survive this unprecedented assault? Or are we entering a new era where power politics trumps institutional constraints? The answers to these questions will shape not just the 2026 midterm elections, but the future of American democracy itself. In California, Texas, Washington, D.C., and Alaska, the battles being fought today will determine what kind of country we become tomorrow. The stakes have never been higher, and the outcome has never been more uncertain. Stay tuned as these historic events continue to unfold, reshaping the American political landscape in ways we're only beginning to understand.